Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 21st of October 2014. Keeping my voice down again, still here in a hotel in Odessa. And it's the early hours of the morning, so I don't want to speak too loudly and wake everyone up. Hi to everyone, thanks for listening. This is episode 29. So if there's any you've missed in the past, go and check them out. I noticed last time I looked, episode 20 had 666 views. So feel free to watch that, even if it's to move it away from that scary number. Quick appeal for sharing the show. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it with friends on any other social media. Download it, upload it onto your own sites, tweet it on Twitter as well. We don't have the luxury of PR companies working for us, so we appreciate any help you can with increasing the amount of listeners. I thought I'd start off today by telling you what's coming up in today's show. I think there may be some confusion with the way I go through the news at the beginning. Some people have heard that, I think, and just thought that this show reads out mainstream news as fact. I just wanted to point out this isn't the case. I usually refer to mainstream news and comment on it, but by no means accept that it's necessarily true, that what I'm reading is true. This is just read from mainstream, so at the beginning, although some facts may be true, and I'll comment on it where appropriate. Anyway, today we'll look at some of the headlines and comment where necessary. I'm going to check if there's any voicemails, and then I'll be talking to Sean Stone, son of director Oliver Stone. That's coming up later. After that, we'll be speaking to Anthony, our resident researcher, and we'll be debating later on whether evil in the form of Satan and his demons exist or not. We have a prelude of that already on the site, so you might have seen the first 15 minutes if you've seen those Sentinel chats or Sentinel debates. But the rest of it will be on this episode today. So if you've already seen the first 15 minutes, you can skip over that later and listen to the rest of it. There's still plenty more to come. Then after that, we'll wind down the episode. Just a reminder that we may now have some offshoot bonus shows, as I just mentioned, called Sentinel Debates, Sentinel Chats, and who knows, maybe some more coming up, just so we can do some shorter videos as well. Also, just to let you know, we have two YouTube channels, Truth Sentinel and Truth Sentinel 2, and also some other websites have put our videos up. We may also do some videos in the future. At the moment they're just audios, but we may do some videos at some point, maybe in the next month or so anyway. Today's news then, I'll just comment on a few things I've seen in the news. Ukraine seems to have slipped out of the news a little. I'm here in Odessa, Ukraine, and being a fair distance away from the east, things are calm here. But last time I was here I saw how quickly that can change, with bullets flying in the streets, firebombs and people burning to death right near where I was staying. At the moment things are nothing like that, so calm in Odessa. If the war does flare up again and spread to other parts of Ukraine, it's likely that Odessa will feature as its port city and therefore of strategic importance, but obviously we hope that doesn't happen. As mentioned in last week's episode, away from the glare of the international media, civilians are being shot on their way to and from the shops in East Ukraine. Amnesty International say there's evidence of atrocities committed by both sides over there in the east. And there's strong evidence implicating Ukrainian government forces. They actually referred to 4 men in the Amnesty report. But I've seen videos and photographs of civilians mostly. And this is the kind of thing that happens during a war. You get a complete loss of regard for human life. I do feel that in some way international disputes should be dealt with in a different way to military force, because it's kind of illogical. It's always been in the past, if there's an international problem, the politicians send in their military and they all start killing each other. But surely in this era we live in now, we're supposed to be civilized. It doesn't actually make any sense. I mean, look at the Second World War. millions die on either side, and you end up at square one, or one side has lost more people than another side, so they're declared the winners. Doesn't that strike you as insane? It does me. I mean, I'm serious. I think politicians should actually fight and put their lives on the line, and the logic behind that would be there would be a lot less wars if they had to actually fight themselves. You know, their government ministers and even the prime minister should lead by example. You would eliminate a lot of wars, I think, if that was implemented. Anyway, so fierce fighting continues in the Syrian town of Kobane, which we discussed last episode. There was apparently a couple of days of calm, and they were pushing back the Islamic State militants, if we're to believe the mainstream news, and now it's all flared up again. And apparently the US military have been dropping weapons, ammunitions and medical supplies to Kurdish fighters, and Turkey's now allowing Iraqi Kurdish fighters to cross the Syrian border, allegedly. And thousands of people have fled Kobane, and some have fled into Turkey, although there was some resistance at the border. I don't know if there still is. So other things in the news, of course, Ebola. It's still spiralling out of control in 3 West African countries, but it seems I've read a lot of glimmers of hope elsewhere in the world, and that just sounds a little bit suspicious to me. Nigeria declared Ebola free Monday. Senegal now rid of the virus. I don't know, just it does seem like a bit too convenient. We'll have to see what's happening. Nobody's quite sure if this is the big population control cull, which is probably going to happen at some point. That's just a fact. I mean, we've got too many people in control who are into eugenics, and they're openly into eugenics. So, you know, it's coming straight out of their own mouths that they want to bring down the population. As I mentioned last week, standing ovations for professors like Eric Pianka, who stood up and said that we should bring the population down significantly, and even amongst the population of the citizens, I think there's a kind of almost like a suicide cult mentality gathering momentum, where people actually think, yeah, we should be culled, and you have some people from the green sector who are actually volunteering and saying, yeah, you know, if I'll kill myself if everyone else does. So, a bit strange if you ask me. Obama says he's going to send a SWAT team in now, the second there's any sign anyone has Ebola. So people could be sitting down for dinner, somebody sneezes, and then the SWAT team kick in your windows and take you away. I may be exaggerating slightly there, but it does seem a bit stupid to get a SWAT team. They're hardly a medical team, are they? I mean, there should be serious investigations as to the origin of the outbreak of Ebola now, and when it first occurred in the 70s in Zaire. You know, there's lots of people saying this should be investigated, because it is a fact that at places like Fort Detrick and in the past the CIA have looked at bioweapons. They have released chemicals over cities to see what would happen. And since they've done that in the past, and those are historical facts, check them out for yourself. Look at MKUltra experiments to see what people are capable of. This is all acknowledged, as I think I showed or I referred to a video you can watch on YouTube, President Clinton apologizing for some of the experiments. These are experiments on individuals and whole cities, okay, that have happened in the past. It's not likely they've stopped, so these should be investigated. Since they've made mistakes in the past, it's likely that they're still making mistakes now, and they should be held accountable. An investigation as to the origin of these diseases, and not too many people laugh off the idea that this might not be natural. But believe me, and you know, look at history. They've done it before. They do create bioweapons in laboratories. They could either escape accidentally, but more likely they're probably experiments, so these should be looked into and investigated. If there's nothing to hide, as they often say to us, then surely no problem. If you've got nothing to hide, then we can investigate. We have a paedophile cover-up in Westminster in the UK, and that's still not been addressed, which by now I would consider criminal, that they've taken so long to investigate this. It's basically because they're putting into place the pieces of a cover-up, and the public continue on like nothing has happened, because deep down they don't believe there are many paedophiles in government, or rather the topic would go away. They still trust their government. You know, it's not likely that high-level ministers or even former prime ministers would be involved in child abuse, is it? Well, yes it is, and they often use it as a way to manipulate these politicians into passing laws which they otherwise may not have thought was a good idea. I mean, if they do admit and do implicate some of these high-level ministers, then it could bring down the entire government, and really that wouldn't be such a bad thing. It'd probably be best in the long term. It'd be good to have a complete clear out, and actually it wouldn't be bad if we could change the entire system. Anarchy would be better than the system we have at the moment. And actually, I would strongly recommend that a lot of people look into what anarchy really is, because you might be surprised, as we've all been misled about the real definition of anarchy. It's not the chaos you may have been led to believe. Just spend a little bit of time having a look at what anarchy really is, and then just think about whether it might be slightly better than what we've got at the moment. Talking again about the World Wildlife Fund, like I was last episode, saw an article on CNN, white rhinos are close to extinction. I think there's really is less than 10 now, I believe. I think the number in this article was mentioned was 7. But you know, of course, we've got people like Prince Philip, who've always been ambassadors for the World Wildlife Fund, secretly going out and actually hunting down these kind of endangered species, and then making videos pretending that they are looking after nature, and also then openly saying they'd like to cull the population of the world. I mean, the truth is, it is the elite that are responsible for most of the problems in the world, most of the destruction in the world. I mean, who buys all these exotic dead animals and ivory? Who cuts down and destroys all the rainforest? Who's using up the world's resources and mismanaging it? Who is destroying the planet through war, destroying economies and disrupting families? Mostly governments. If it was left to the people, I think most of the problems in the world would disappear. It's big business and governments that don't encourage self-sufficiency. I mean, if we became more self-sufficient, we wouldn't need so much technology, wouldn't need so much mass business. Okay, so let's move on. I just wanted to show you, just in case you still believe we have rational, decent people running our government, here's a few outtakes from Prime Minister's questions at Westminster in the UK, where a lot of policies and laws are passed. And this is just typical noises and typical questions, typically what goes on at Westminster in the UK. Just have a quick listen, just a couple of minutes.
Mr. Speaker, recently a single mother with small children came to see me in Sheffield. She had with her a bundle of letters.
Mr. Speaker, the first point of recapitalisation was to save banks that would otherwise have collapsed. And we not only saved the world, saved the banks and saved the banks and led the way. We not only saved the bank. Mr. Speaker, total spending will continue to rise, and it will be at 0% rise in 2013-14. In 2011-12, and 12-13, it will continue to rise.
Order.
Now, I know how much he likes personalising politics, and I know. Of course, I know how he hates. I know how he hates Punch and Judy politics.
So those were our MPs at Westminster, making the big decisions that are going to affect us all. Meanwhile, child abuse is still going on, and there's wars around the world. They continue to make their childish animal noises and have a bit of a laugh. Myself, I may be heading for Thailand soon, and apparently the Thai Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha and his wife Naraporn Chan-o-cha have been liaising with other governments, leaders around the world. Not everyone's comfortable with them or what's happened in Thailand. Japan has expressed concern about the undermining of the democratic processes, although is there any real democracies around the world anyway? There's so much corruption going on even in our own democracies. Do they really exist? By the way, let me know your opinions on, you listen to me talking, I'm sure a lot of you completely disagree with me, so don't forget to use our voicemail option. Go to the About section of Truth Sentinel and you'll find a voicemail where you can leave a 1.5 minute message and I can respond to it on the next show. Okay, so I don't think Thais would ever voluntarily give up their monarchy after years and years of social conditioning. Apparently they love their king. And who knows, he might be nicer than some, I'm not sure. But, I mean, bear in mind, if you do criticise the king in Thailand, you do get 15-year sentences. And that there is actually a case going on at the moment. Sulak Sivaraska made some comments about a previous king, not even the current king, and he may be in big trouble and could be facing a 15-year sentence. So it's no wonder the Thais love their king, really. Let's talk a bit about Operation Paperclip. This is the operation where Nazis after the Second World War were relocated to the States, and their expertise that they had from doing experiments on people in concentration camps and for committing atrocities. This expertise was utilised by the US government under Operation Paperclip. Have a look into that. Anyway, I was reading that there's a lot of former guards at Nazi labour camps where millions obviously died, and the US Justice Department are still paying benefits to them, even though they've actually left the US and returned back to their countries such as Germany. I mean, there should be, I'm sure the public could be quite angry about that some of their taxes are going to paying for people who aren't even living in the States. And the article I read was on CNN, actually, and they listed some of the former Nazi guards and mayors and people in the SS, people such as Jacob Denziger. Other things I saw in the news were about the submarine that was near Sweden that people are looking for. And some people suspect that the Russia's submarine's in trouble. These are all just political games. Unless you're part of the secret services, you won't really know what's going on. I suspect that it's not a Russian submarine in trouble anyway. But Sweden's military has spent 3 days looking and scouring the waters of Stockholm, looking for foreign underwater activity. There's also been mysterious space planes landed in the US returning from unknown 2-year missions. The fact the space plane exists is not a secret. Where it's been is a secret, so it'll be interesting to know what's been going on there. Let me know what you think's been going on. Use the voicemail, leave us a message. Have they been going on secret missions to another planet or something like that? Anyway, let's go to our voicemails, see if we've got any this week.
Hi Scott, it's Tony from Northwest London. Just wanted to say that I'm a big fan of the show, listen to it a lot when I'm working out, and would be great to have an episode featuring Bill Maloney. But look forward to the new episodes and keep up the good work.
So nice to hear from Tony. I know there's a lot of people who use longer podcasts for workouts. I've noticed on Twitter we've got lots of fitness fanatics using Truth Sentinel as a podcast whilst working out. And the podcasts are kind of ideal for that, for going for a long walk with your dog, or for going to the gym and put on the podcast and do a 2-hour workout. Helps keep your mind off the task at hand and helps you with motivation. Great for listening whilst jogging. If you turn up the sound, give it a try. I'm going to try and do it myself and get in shape. Also, Tony brought up a good suggestion for a guest, Bill Maloney. Check him out at Pie and Mash Films. He's really looking into the paedophile scandal at Westminster, and I really have tried to contact him on Twitter before. If anyone does have any contacts with Bill Maloney, please get in touch with us, or if Bill Maloney, if you're listening, please get in contact. We'd love to have you as a guest on the show. I'm going to try again. I'm going to contact Bill on Twitter and via his site and see if we can get him on, because I think we really need to step up the campaign against the Westminster paedophiles and push the government to investigate and do something about the allegations, and the victims deserve better than what they're being given at the moment. Seems to be a cover-up as far as I'm concerned. People need to go to prison for what's happened, and if it brings down the government, so be it. I think that's one of the reasons they're trying to stop the information coming out. Last episode we spoke to Seth Davis from Too Real News, and he's also linked to Truth is Stranger Than Fiction show with Pete Wicker from Chicago, US. And we spoke to Corey Washington from The Average Liberator as well. I think he might be from Wisconsin. Today, as I mentioned, we'll be chatting to Sean Stone. If you're a fan of movies, you'll have heard of Sean's father, movie director Oliver Stone. Famous for movies such as JFK, Natural Born Killers, Born on the 4th of July, The Doors, great movie, all of which Sean acted in. As well as acting, Sean has directed movies such as Singularity, which is about a deadly virus, quite topical at the moment, and Greystone Park, about strange goings-on at an MK-Ultra mind control asylum. Sean was also in Conspiracy Theory, TV series with Jesse Ventura, looking at some common conspiracies. Great if you need an introduction to some conspiracies. So that's Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. Sean also interviews guests himself on Lip TV, on Buzzsaw, and they've got quite a lot of interesting guests and topics, so check them out too. Anyway, without wasting any more time, let's go to our chat with Sean. Hello, hi Sean.
Hello. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on Truth Sentinel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're actually the second person I've had on this show who has a famous father. And coincidentally, you've interviewed the other person's father in question on your own show. We recently had Gareth Icke on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on this show. So I watched your interview with David Icke recently, and it certainly went better than the interview with Jesse Ventura on Conspiracy Theory. What did you think of what David had to say?
Well, actually, I was going to say I'd be really curious to know what Gareth has to say, because obviously I'm curious to know how being raised by a father who's obviously been out there and, considered out there since the early 90s, how that would affect Gareth's attitude and his worldview and just his own understanding if he's come to his own conclusions, or if he's rejected his father's ideas. But as far as David goes, I don't have any antipathy towards him. A lot of people who are conspiracy theorists, think that he's he's too much in his allegations about the reptilians, or thinking outside of this three-dimensional hologram reality that we live in. But I feel like he's kind of a gateway drug as far as I'm concerned. He's the guy that introduced a lot of us to, you know, theories that were outside the box, and, you know, in a much further, you know, exiting this three-dimensional realm, entering, you know, this concept of fourth-dimensional alien presences and, you know, bloodlines and whatnot of you know, these so-called alien beings, the Anunnaki. He's introduced us to a lot of these ideas that, yes, they've been around there, and he was not the originator of them necessarily, but he, you know, using his platform, I think, definitely has allowed for people to do some critical thinking and open up dialogue and discussion. And, you know, not to say that he's entirely accurate or his history is that great, but I'm sorry, as an historian, I'm saying his historical work is not necessarily great, but just as a thinker and as a personality, I appreciate what he's done to kind of break the mold of, you know, of what is this reality? Is it possible that we're in a matrix type of system? You know, are these alien beings real? And if so, you know, would it be possible that we live in a world that looks more like They Live, you know, the John Carpenter film? So I think on the whole, I appreciate the work that he's done, regardless of whether or not I agree with everything he says, or, you know, can he back it up and verify it with his own experience? I'm sure he can't. Yeah,
anyone who talks a lot like David does about you know, things that are more spiritual is bound to say some things that not everyone's going to agree with. But I agree with you. I mean, he still says a lot of interesting stuff that makes people investigate more about the world we live in, rather than just looking at sort of the mainstream media's view of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Gareth was talking on episode 23, so if you get the chance, he does talk about his sort of life, you know, growing up with his father, talking about these issues.
And does he agree with it? I mean, like, ultimately, has he kind of accepted that worldview, or has he rejected it?
I think he's finding more and more he accepts what's going on. I don't know whether he accepts everything. I mean, it probably would be difficult for someone to say they didn't agree with everything their father said. I'm sure he doesn't. I mean, who does agree with everything their parents say?
Well, exactly. I mean, who agrees with everything that anyone says? At the end of the day, it's about us finding our own spiritual truth and being able to accept, or at least hold, these ideas that seem far out, because I believe imagination is the most important thing. The mind is the key to all reality, and we get so caught up in the material sense of existence and being that we oftentimes misunderstand the true nature of magic, which is the deployment of mind, being able to, first of all, conceive of something in order to manifest or create it, but also the fact that things can be occurring in different dimensions of existence and only manifesting here as in a symbolic form. So, to me, the key is just not to be caught up too much with this realm or this world, and all the spiritual teachings really are about that, whether it's, you know, the Judeo-Christian tradition, what Christ was telling us, what Muhammad was talking about when he said this world is, you know, basically is no better. The root of all evil is believing in this world. Really, this world is not the end-all or be-all, as we know, and we shouldn't be too tied up with the concrete, so-called concrete reality, but really more in the mind, the imagination, the power of creativity, because obviously this is also influencing our emotional states, and that's going to either give us a healthier prognosis as a human race, you know, if we actually had a better trajectory and grasp of our fears and desires. And I think that's really where, you know, it has to begin with us and our mindset.
Do you think, I mean, you mentioned They Live, which is a fantastic film. Anyone who hasn't seen They Live, the John Carpenter film, then you owe it to yourself to watch it. It's great, but do you think people could become too fearful and sort of almost full of paranoia, or even become maybe too spiritual as well? I have met some people who are so spiritual you can't actually have a sensible conversation with them as well.
Well, when you go down these roads, and I try to deal with it a little bit in Greystone Park, my feature film that came out 2 years ago.
It's quite scary, that one, isn't it? I saw a couple of clips from that. It looked pretty frightening.
I hope so. I hope it's scary. I mean, I had to deal with my fears in the process of making it, because I was going to these places that challenge you. They challenge your psyche, they challenge your mind, because again, you're going to places, abandoned mental hospitals, haunted locations that you can't. They're dark. You know, you think you're alone, but you're not quite sure if someone else is there. You're not sure if are there demons that are that could be lurking in these locations, that are playing with your mind, that are making you see things, that are making you hear things. But it goes back to this issue of the psyche, and when you go down these paths, you can ultimately abandon reality. That's when you're in the mental hospital. And I know what you're saying. I've met people like this who are just so caught up in the spiritual states of existence, or they've maybe sometimes lost themselves into different domains. Let's say like astral planes. They've lost some part of their soul has been lost. They never really come back, right?
Yeah.
And, we always wondered that if people who are having mental issues, mental problems, couldn't, rather than just having a physiological diagnosis, they couldn't be having some kind of spiritual breakdown that causes a schizophrenia or a bipolarity, right, or a multiple personality disorder. Could that be a spiritual problem? And we don't really look at that in the modern realm because it's all been concretized and labeled, and we can understand that the brain is malfunctioning. But again, what's causing that brain to malfunction? And we know that there's energetic states that are beyond the physical measurement. I'm sorry, they could potentially be measured physically, but they're beyond our physical body as far as we understand it. And these energetic states are what constitute us. So that's when you start getting into energies, that's when you start getting into the spiritual realm and the different colors, because every energy has a vibration at a certain frequency that can be graphed, and that's why people see different auras and people's chakra system, for example, and what color they're resonating at. So there is a science. I think there is a science that's possible. There's a spiritual science, but I think that it's a shame to not try to account for that in our medical, like in our approach to medicine, for example. And I've heard, like RT reported recently, that there's been a mass study of life after death, and that now scientists are looking seriously at the idea that yes, there is a life after death, that people who were technically dead, 40% or more, reported hearing things and recalling things from beyond, even though their body was technically dead, and were still able to recall things. So I hope that science gets more interested in approaching and addressing these issues, because there is a science to it. And I think what you're talking about, the spiritual people, sometimes they get too mystical, and they don't want to necessarily deal with the idea that yes, there is a science to this. It's not purely in the realm of whatever I'm experiencing and whatever I feel is what I believe. It's like, no, I can have my experience and I can relate, but I'm going to try to relate my experience to others and try to still ground myself in a terrestrial existence, engaging with other people, and getting feedback and learning and growing and expanding, because we're obviously still on this planet for a reason. If you want to check out completely, then you would ultimately you could leave the body behind and pass on and carry on to the next existence. But as long as you're here in physical form, then there are reasons that are still weighing us, let's say, like gravity, into this existence.
I agree with you. We are, it seems logical to me that we are here for a reason. And therefore, if you think about it logically, there must be an afterlife, because if there isn't, it's a pretty pointless existence we'll be living. But I mean, some people disagree with that view, but it seems to make sense to me.
Well, the existential point of view got into that whole question of, whether would it be pointless, would it be futile for us to be here, like Sisyphus, for example, pushing a boulder up a hill over and over, right, day after day, and ultimately there's no relent to this journey. And I guess it boils down to your philosophy. But in my experience, in my own questioning of myself, and not even just it's not from drugs, it's literally just from my own sense of memory and instinct and intuition, it draws me to the conclusion, yes, we are eternal beings. We've had past selves, and we'll have future selves, and this is not the be-all end-all by any means, and that's what makes me, I guess, a spiritual person. I think most people kind of would be classified as that, though. I do believe across the world, most people do have some inclination that there is more to this world than just what we're seeing with our 2 eyes and 2 ears.
Yeah, it does seem so. I was going to say, having a famous father and talking about some of the issues do, not so much the spiritual ones, but maybe some of the ones that are more political, which could get you into hot water. Is it a protection having a famous father, or is it actually more of a liability?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it brings more attention.
Yeah.
I think it's always a double-edged sword. I can't imagine what my life would have been like without having my father, because again, it's not so much whether or not he's famous in the eyes of the world. It's just that's my reality. Is he was my father, and a lot of his ideas and his way of viewing things, and his overall questioning nature and his quest for truth was imparted to me from a young age. From the point of being a kid in JFK, and playing the son of Kevin Costner in that film, where it's I'm basically listening to this argument and hearing this line of thinking that Kennedy was assassinated by shadowy elements within our own power structure, right? That imparts into you a sense of questioning, and ultimately it can lead you to follow that same path. So I don't know if I would be who I am without my father, you see. So the whole line of questioning is impossible, because if I was born to someone else in a different context, I might have a totally different worldview. I might not be interested by these subjects, right?
Yeah.
So who I am is very much a continuation of the questioning my father has done, and in many ways I'm going further in terms of the questions and in terms of the subject matter. I have no problem, talking and questioning and openly doing so about conspiracies, because I grew up with a father who was labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
so it's like assuming the mantle and just saying, okay, fine, you can call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't take offense to it. I'll call myself such. I'm also a conspirator.
Yeah. Your father, supporter of people like Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden. What about yourself? Do you consider them heroes or villains?
Well, I think that's a very simplistic way of media kind of spin way of looking at all these people. I think that each situation is different. I think what Assange did with WikiLeaks was obviously so threatening and dangerous that they had to come after him on these sexual abuse charges that, to me, they seem kind of flimsy. And I think it's WikiLeaks was a tremendously dangerous voice for truth, basically. And I hope that his legacy can continue on, and that more whistleblowers will be willing to come out and step forward. I mean, the case of Snowden, for example, Snowden was a whistleblower who chose to identify himself. I don't think that he had to do that. I think given the situation, he could have remained anonymous and leaked the information he wanted to. I think he wanted to be a movie star in a certain sense, and I think he has a whole manifesto that I haven't read about privacy, so I don't know enough about his psyche. I think my dad's working on a film, and I'll be really curious to read the script and see what he makes, because I don't think that we really understand the full picture. I think there's a lot more to be disclosed as far as his activity, who he may have been working for inside of our own intelligence community, because it feels like he had he had a greater awareness than his situation would have allowed. He had greater access than he could have gotten by himself, I think. And on the whole, there just seems to be a lot more to that story than we know thus far. But either way, it's it's ridiculous to say that he's a villain for disclosing the domestic abuse by our government of our Constitution. I mean, they're continuing to violate things like the right to privacy. The right to the right for us to be able to conduct, our business and phone calls and whatnot without feeling that we're being surveilled and spied upon. And yet, again, this was disclosed years ago under Bush, with his, remember, Bush basically was pushing for these expanded powers of the NSA spying on phone calls and whatnot, wiretapping. And, this was known, and yet no one really seems to care. So
they don't, do they? I'm actually quite shocked. I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me, and something that maybe 15 years ago people would have been up in arms about. But now in the UK, right, people seem quite okay with the fact they're having everything monitored because of obviously the terrorist threat.
Well, that's what they say. They say it's because of the terrorist threat, and I'm not sure if people don't care because they're afraid of the terrorists, or maybe people just don't care because they don't assume privacy is going to exist in the digital age anyway. That may be where the psyche of man is heading, is just this loss of overall privacy into this realm of, Twitter and Facebook and communication where most people don't feel they have anything to hide.
Yeah, and I think it comes also from a trust with a large majority of the population in the UK anyway, who still trust the government, and they can't see a scenario where they would actually turn these things against them in the future.
Right. I mean, that could be. It's difficult to know. I mean, the British problem is they have a fascist government because that's the nature of England. There's no written constitution. It's all it's all ad hoc. The legislation is ad hoc, right? So it's not like the United States where there's a constitution that people can point to and say, look, President Obama has violated this. They've violated our rights to due process, for example. They've violated our rights to privacy. The British don't have that. They don't have a constitution that's being violated.
But, so but in the US, aren't people saying that now? But what effect is it having, though?
It's not necessarily to say that it's having an effect, but the point is that we actually have something to point to. And there is at least the threat, I would think, the threat of reprisal from at some future point of going after people like Bush and Obama for their abuses of power. Because at least we have that Constitution, as long as we value it. I don't know if we really value the Constitution very much anymore anyway, the American people. I don't think a lot of Americans even know what the Constitution means, what it says. So there's this overall issue of illiteracy, the dumbing down of the population that's occurred from the 1960s, 70s period onward. That's very real.
Did you see the UK Prime Minister giving a speech at the UN recently, comparing 9/11 conspiracy theorists with ISIS terrorists?
Yeah, but that guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so far beyond, and yet I feel like I've heard this kind of dialogue before. I mean, you hear it from certain news networks, certain Fox News type of personalities, would probably say that. But how can you even take these people seriously? That's my question. How do people take ISIS seriously? How do people genuinely believe ISIS is an army that popped out of nowhere, took 3 major cities in 3 weeks, right, with 30,000 personnel and advanced weaponry and tanks and jeeps that are made in America, and they don't see something very suspicious in this whole incident, allowing us to now bomb Syria, which Obama wanted to do last year and couldn't get the approval to do. Where's the outcry? It's a complete, it's like being in a mental hospital. There's just no sanity here.
Completely agree with you.
There's no same dialogue on any of these topics.
Yeah, and it was quite clear, before that they were desperate to go into Syria, and they tried the chemical weapons issue, but that didn't work, and the public weren't buying it. And then all of a sudden, they bring in ISIS and have a couple of beheading videos, and the fear can actually get to people, and they seem to have achieved what they were setting out to do in the first place.
Well, believe me, they haven't achieved it yet, but they're using ISIS as the new Al-Qaeda. They're calling it ISIL for a reason. When Obama says ISIL, that means Iraq and the Levant, not just Iraq and Syria. So first it's going to be Syria, next is going to be Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, any country that we want to basically intervene on their behalf, because ISIL is now operating out of those regions. Now America's got a free hand, to function. So if Syria goes, it gets destabilized, Lebanon will be next.
And some of the things you're saying there, now if I say them over here, well, I'm not actually in the UK at the moment, but according to Cameron, they're going to bring in some laws next year, which is basically going to start locking up people who say stuff like that and shutting down websites. It's getting insane in the UK. The
problem of the fascist British government. I'm sorry, England is a fascist government. Fascism is predicated in the fact there's no constitution. It's literally ad hoc legislation that they can make up on a dime, and it's it's in collaboration with the security apparatus that's probably beyond America's, because the British have gone to this insanity of surveilling everything with their cameras, including people's speed limits. So, people don't have a problem with being surveilled, but how about when your car is being, is caught speeding 5-10 miles over the speed limit by a camera, and they start, they're sending you, bills to pay, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. I've had enough of them.
Tickets. So you see, the fascism thing is interesting because all the security measure, the legal process, is not only about imprisoning people, it's about taking their money.
Oh, yeah, believe me, that's one of the reasons I stay out of the UK, because I got sick of paying those damn speeding fines. They set them up deliberately to trap people.
Right, exactly. And that's what these governments are. They're tax farms. They're here to basically to tax you to death, whether it be through legal means of taxation, so-called legal means of taxation, or through the ticketing process, right? Literally, it's systematic. It's systematic looting that's going on of our own people, and that's what the Western world is now having to do, because really the financial structure is such a mess. It's so entangled with these derivatives and these quadrillions of dollars that are instruments of debt that are owed, and really will never be paid back. So I just see it all kind of coming to a tremendous meltdown in the coming year or two. I might be wrong on the timetable, but the fundamental nature of the financial system is corrupt, and I don't think it can be saved.
I think I agree with you, actually. Let's move on to something slightly more light-hearted. I probably first saw you on Conspiracy Theory TV series. I quite enjoyed watching that, and it gave sort of a background to a lot of sort of well-known conspiracy theories. Did you like working on that, and what was the most compelling episode for you?
Well, sure. I mean, I loved working on conspiracy theory because we got to dive into some really cool topics, such as the reptilians, and we went to Dulce for that episode. We went to Skinwalker Ranch for another episode about these claims of interdimensional aliens going back to the Native Americans in Skinwalker, Utah, basically in Utah. And we did an episode on time travel. We did an episode on what else? There was like the Death Ray. There was targeted individuals. But I would say Skinwalker Ranch was probably the most fun going out there. I really wish I could have gone and explored the entire facility and jumped the fence and kind of gone all the way in, but it's a privately owned facility that has armed private security guards, so it would have been difficult to do that. But I think I would love to know more about what's happening there and what the scientists that Robert Bigelow, who owns the ranch, what the scientists that he's brought in to conduct the experiments, what they've discovered about that location and what's really going on there. Is there an alien base underground? Is it a portal? Is it like historically? Is it some kind of portal, doorway to other dimensions? It's such a cool location. So I think that was a lot of fun.
Have you any plans to go back there with Buzzsaw, maybe the program you're doing at the moment?
Well, again, I mean, I can't. All these things are only done insofar as you're able to do them well. I can't, if I go to Skinwalker and sit outside the fence, it's not that exciting. If someone gives me access, or someone wants to come and, for example, tell me their story about what they've seen at Skinwalker, or what they've experienced, or what they may know, then I'll interview them. But I'm not here to kind of, unfortunately, with broadcast and whatnot, it's difficult to break the law and to break into these kind of facilities.
You've had a lot of experience with a lot of conspiracies because of Conspiracy Theory series, and you do a lot of interviews on Buzzsaw as well. If I give you just mention a couple of famous conspiracies, would you be able to give me just a couple of sentences feedback on whether you think they're possible hoaxes? Just a quick opinion, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Georgia Guidestones.
Well, they're there.
They are there, yeah. I mean, do you think there's some nefarious kind of reason for them being there? regarding population control. Or I mean, I have heard some people say it could be a bit of a hoax. The person who there's a quarry nearby, they might have been trying to use it as a bit of a PR campaign. But I don't know. Any thoughts on that particular issue?
PR for what? I mean, the Guidestones say what they want. They want to bring the world's population to less than 500 million. I don't even know all the commandments that are written there.
Well, that's the rest of them sound okay, actually. That it's that one in particular that people are worried about. Yeah, but basically bringing the population of the Earth, sustaining it at 500 million, which obviously means wiping out 90% of the population.
Right, and then apparently there's someone has gone in the middle of the night recently and written 2014 on top of.
No, they didn't write it. It's actually been put in there properly with stone cutting tools.
It's etched. Yeah, exactly.
It's a cube. Right. So it's got 20 on one side and 14 on the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you talk to people within the empire, and the so-called Illuminati point of view, I guess you'd call it, the families, the ruling, the elite, do they want depopulation? 100%. And I mean, it's not like that's a theory. Listen to Prince Philip. He talked about it for years. He said he wanted to come back as a virus to wipe humans out. Bertrand Russell said it in the early 1900s. He said there should be a black plague every generation to wipe out the darker skinned peoples of the earth. Bill Gates has talked about it. Ted Turner has talked about depopulation en masse. So it's not a theory. This is their point of view.
Yeah, no, true. And that Professor Pianka stood up and got a standing ovation when he talked about culling the population of the Earth as well.
Right. So these people are very happy to depopulate the planet, and their agenda is not in your interest. I mean, people who think that there are too many people and there's overpopulation and these people have their best interest at heart. These people don't have your best interest at heart. If they had your best interest at heart, we would be in a much more high-tech society than we're in right now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Because given the nature of human population growth, it's always grown only because of the innovations in agriculture, in deployment of transportation, in industry, and all that's pretty much been shut down. We're on our ways back to the Stone Age at this point. If you think about the societies in the West, like America, which was the first one to build a transcontinental rail, and now we don't. The Chinese are the ones with the maglev, and we're sitting here with with these horrible traffic jams on the freeways, and our industrial sector has been shut down in the middle of the country. So, why are we not in a nuclear fusion-based process? People are saying, fission is dangerous. Well, what about fusion? Now the Navy, you can look it up. The Navy claims they're using water to fuel their craft, some of their craft. So obviously we're at this we're having breakthroughs in fusion. We had breakthroughs going back to the 70s in fusion, including the fusion torch that could completely transform garbage into its base energetic form. And all these things have been ignored and intentionally lied about or blacked out because these people, these so-called environmental types, or the ones who are trying to wipe out the population, want us to be in a depressed, collapsing economy with a depressed industry, ultimately putting us on the brink of extinction when this Ebola or some other plague comes, and we're not in a high enough state of industry and medical infrastructure to handle it. And I think that's what's coming.
Yeah, and anyone who thinks it's a bit far-fetched to say they want to kill us all, then just do some research on eugenics. Just spend a bit of time doing some research. It's pretty frightening. Anyway, let's move on. The Pentagon plane, 9/11. There was supposed to be the plane that hit the Pentagon, and there's been no video of the actual plane. And
did a plane hit the Pentagon? Absolutely not. Yeah. There's no way in hell.
It doesn't seem likely, does it?
It's not only not likely, it's impossible. It's impossible from the point of view that this is the most secure military facility in America. Let's say probably in the whole world, right? This is our hub of military matters. To let that get hit by anything is beyond absurd. The idea that a plane created that small of a hole in the building, it doesn't make sense. The idea that the pilot did a 270-degree dive bomb with a 767 or 747 plane, right? is almost beyond impossible. Then landing it basically at a level of it was a landing level to actually hit the building.
Well, he's supposed to have knocked down a lamppost, isn't he?
Not just that, because it's so low, the Pentagon's so low, he basically had to come in at a landing level. This is a term you're talking about. A pilot who has no experience landing planes, let alone a plane of that size. Coming in at a landing level to actually not hit the grass, but still hit the building, and having no support from radar or any kind of assistance that a normal pilot would have when bringing a plane down, right? So to be able to hit that building at the exact wing of the Pentagon that's just gone through renovations, that even the witnesses at the time said they never saw any evidence of a wreckage, that people in D.C. who happened to show up there, never saw any indications of a plane wreck beyond the few photographs that were later put out. And then, on top of it, okay, you want to tell me that a plane hit the Pentagon, so show me the video. Yeah. And what did they show? They never showed a video. They showed an explosion. So guess what? It didn't happen.
Well, there's not even any videos of the plane coming in that area at all from all the CCTV cameras that must be around that area.
They released the video only showing the explosion. They cut out the actual impact. So it's bullshit. I mean, that's it. I mean, if you have a video that shows the plane hitting the Pentagon, show it. But they won't, because it's not true.
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me what you're saying, but I just cannot understand why other people out there will just say, no, this is a conspiracy theory. Of course the plane hit the building. I don't understand why people aren't questioning it.
What you say in response is, guess what? It's also a theory that the plane hit the Pentagon because there's no video. No one wants to divulge the video. If you have the proof, show me. If the whole notion of the 9/11 attack via Al Qaeda, right? That itself is a conspiracy theory. You see, It's a conspiracy theory. It's a theory that Bin Laden and a group of terrorists conspired to attack America on 9/11. That's it. It's a conspiracy theory. We are offering a counter theory. We're saying that there was an inside job.
And nobody seems to be prepared to actually answer some of the huge questions. Like, for example, Building 7. Why did it fall down? I mean, it's a simple question, but no. I saw Rumsfeld on a video the other day and saying someone questioning about that, and he said, "What's Building 7?" You can see it on YouTube. Just type in Rumsfeld Building 7, and he says, "What's Building 7?" I mean, it's just it's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, he wasn't briefed on that one, I guess. Yeah, Building 7, exactly. That was a smoking gun, that something else was afoot.
And some people are probably not even aware there was Building 7.
At this point, most people are familiar with it. Some people are still repeating the claim that the fires caused from the first two towers somehow made the Building 7 collapse at near free fall speed. It's just nonsense. I mean, any thinking person can look at this and just say there's something wrong. But people don't want to be thinking. They want to follow. They want to follow what the teacher tells them. They want to follow the herd. There are very few. We were talking about before the show. There are very few rebels in any. If you take like a social study or experiment, there are very few rebels in any group. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's not the majority. The majority of people will go along. The majority of people will follow, and that's fine if you have a good leadership. It's fine when you have a righteous leader, when you have good people in charge. But when you have bad people in charge, man, you end up with what you have now, which is Nazi Germany redux. Nazi Germany under the guise of the American flag.
And the British flag as well.
The British were the ones that created the Nazis. So, the British really are the problem. The British Empire never died. People think it died. It didn't die. It transformed itself. The British Empire, under the policy of Cecil Rhodes and Alfred Milner and his cohorts, right, at the turn of the 19th century to the 20th, had designed this whole plan to say, look, we're going to reincorporate America into our empire. We're going to turn the empire into the Commonwealth, and ultimately, we're going to go towards this idea of a unified. Centralized banking system, government system, that's what the design of the League of Nations, the United Nations, was supposed to ultimately be. You see, was a way of controlling these so-called third world countries, these backward former colonial nations. Look at it. All the nations that the British and the French used to run, they're all pretty screwed up. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, all
indeed.
these nations that were colonies are pretty much screwed up because the British and French left certain people in charge, or positioned certain people in charge, to go along with their plan. Then they ultimately used the IMF and the World Bank to control those countries' economies. So, you know, you see the nature of this New World Order that we're in, and it looks chaotic, but actually from a higher level, it's pretty much created. Almost every situation you're looking at is either created, good. It's a Hegelian dialectic, you know, good guy, bad guy situation. The good guy this week is the bad guy next week, and vice versa. And it's about economics. It's about, you know, control. It's about controlling currencies and controlling resources and property, and that's really what it is. And all this this politics and this hysteria and media. It's just a show. It's a dog and pony show for people who are gullible enough to watch it.
Yeah, it's not a very nice show to watch either. I mean, if I was around in the days of the Mayflower and the Pilgrim Fathers, believe me, I would have been a stowaway on that ship.
Yeah.
I wonder what you thought about the MH370 conspiracy theory. I mean, I know it could be a diversion, but you know, it's still kind of an interesting event that's occurred and a bit of a mystery. What's your views on that?
Oh, the missing plane?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have enough information as to who did it. Obviously, yes, there was some, there was some conspiracy there because the plane doesn't just vanish. So there's some conspiracy as far as who took it and for what reason. But as far as the perpetrators and the purpose, I do think there is some connection to the Malaysian flight that got shot down over Ukraine that was supposed to prompt a retaliation against Russia, right?
It was a very weird coincidence, that, if it is a coincidence.
Right. I mean, it's too bizarre to have you never hear of Malaysian Airlines, and all of a sudden, within 3 months' time, you hear, first the missing one, and another one gets shot down. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how the Malaysian stock is doing at the moment, but the point is that there's some correlation going on, but I don't know enough about the who, why, what to speak on it.
How about fluoride in the water? Have you done any investigations into that?
Well, aside from the fact that it's there,
whether it should be there.
The Nazis felt it should be there.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Weren't they the ones to introduce it into the prison camp populations? Apparently
so.
Right.
I looked into it. Some people deny that's the case, but some people say it is the case. So I'm not sure.
I mean, regardless, I don't see why fluoride should be introduced forcibly into the drinking water to keep our teeth healthy. I mean, that's got to be the most bizarre reasoning I've ever heard. If people want to choose to keep their teeth healthy, they can choose to take fluoride tablets and see their dentist about it. Why is the government involving itself into this discussion by introducing fluoride? You see, they're not giving us a choice. It's just there. So that's suspicious. And I don't see a need for that. It's like the healthcare thing. Oh, the government is so benevolent. They want everyone to have insurance. Great. Except that insurance is going to cost me money, and you're still not providing free health care. And the cost of the pills and prescription drugs in the United States is exorbitant compared to countries even like Mexico or Canada, right? So how is this helping me? It's not. It's for the insurance companies to make more money and to tie up with their derivatives, their derivatives trades and whatnot. It's like people think that there's a benevolence here. There's not a benevolence. There's a money interest. Follow the money.
Yep, does seem to be the root of a lot of the evil in the world. You've done I've seen you on Lip TV with Tyrell Ventura doing your Buzzsaw interviews. You've covered a lot of interesting topics on there. What motivates you to get involved with this kind of these kind of topics?
Which ones? Because we do a slew of stuff on Buzzsaw. I mean, we really have fun. We go after everything from extraterrestrials amongst us or on the moon, to conspiracy theories. We've interviewed whistleblowers. We've interviewed mediums and people dealing with the esoteric world.
What's your favorite stuff then?
I don't know that I have a favorite necessarily. I think, to me, I want to try to pull the curtain back a little bit for people to see behind the scenes, to get a little bit of a deeper probing. So no matter what the situation, I just want to get a little bit closer to the hidden reality, let's call it, behind the veil.
Yeah, that makes sense. I saw you speaking to Douglas Dietrich as well, who's been on our show as well. He's quite an encyclopedia of information, isn't he?
Oh yeah. He's like a magician. He talked for an hour and a half on our show. We had to break it up into 3 episodes, but he had some good stuff to say. And there's, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are out there telling you the truth. It may not be 100% true, but I think the point of shows like Buzzsaw is a forum for people to come and speak their truth. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and for people to listen and make up their own minds, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, eventually, something's got to give, right? This system of constant manipulation and lies, deception. Sooner or later, people are either going to wake up or they're going to die, because it can't go on like this forever. This is Rome, and it's Rome. Rome is burning, so it's not going to go on like this forever.
If there are conspiracy theories that aren't true, the government have only got themselves to blame, because they keep lying about everything, so people don't believe them about anything anymore. I mean, Douglas talked a lot about Satanism in the military, and some of your other guests have talked about the occult as well. What's your views on Satanism and the occult? Do you think there's a real evil in the world, like the devil, or is it just a result of people's overactive imaginations?
No, there's remember, go back to the beginning. We were talking about imagination in the mind. Everything that the mind can conceive is real, and that reality has an impact on us. These entities, demons, spirits, they have existence, but their power and their influence is only going to be so strong as we allow them to become. And certain people invoke them and practice this, kind of spirit worship and Satanism and whatnot. And there are various different orders, and there's many ways of doing it, by the way. I mean, the people there's like the Church of Satan kind of stuff, and then there's, the what was it called? The Process Church, kind of Satanism. It's probably different than the Satanism that I believe the elite practice. It's a different form. They may not do it in the same ritualistic way, or they may do it in different varieties and guises. But the intention is ultimately a service to ego, a service to self. And that's not what we're here for. I mean, we can, of course, enjoy our ego, we can enjoy ourselves, but we're not only here to benefit ourselves. We're here as a human race that are all connected spiritually, emotionally, let alone physically, from certain sources, common sources, let's say. And if we don't recognize that, that we all inhabit this planet together, that we're sharing in this experience together, that we're all humans, if we don't recognize that, then we feed the ego, we feed ourselves only at their expense. We will die. This race will die out.
ISIS, the goddess Isis. Do you think there's any connection with this acronym ISIS? We're being told to believe there's this.
Only in a negative sense. ISIS was not I don't think ISIS is an evil goddess. I think only in a negative sense of trying to disparage the goddess. That it's a very powerful energy, ISIS. But she also is a bringer of the new day. There's a quote I put on my Facebook recently because it was interesting. But there's a quote about how she basically will bring, what is it? I have to find it. Either way, she is part of this whole process. ISIS is part of this coming illumination. You see, what's happening now is we have to go through a cleansing it's a painful process. It's a tearing, but through this tearing and destruction, people will find their humanity in a sense. They will find their hearts. They will recognize each other and see each other and recognize how stupid and confused and deceived we have been for so long. The quote that I'm saying this is from Egypt on Isis's temple. I am all that has been, all that is, all that shall be, and no mortal has ever raised my garment, my veil. The fruit which I brought forth became the sun. And that is the dawning of the new day, basically. So she will herald, Isis is part of this whole process. And even though they're using her in a negative, it's an inflating, defamatory faction that they're using right now, will not be the case, because ultimately, darkness gives way to light. The darkness gives way to the dawn.
Yeah, I know it's Katy Perry dressed up as the Isis goddess as well in her Dark Horse video, which was released at a similar time to ISIS coming into the media. Another coincidence, or just a bit strange timing there as well.
It's all synchronicity. It's all desired. It's all designed as we need it.
Okay. If people want to find out any projects that you're working on at the moment, where should they go? Should go to the Lip TV channel or Buzzsaw?
The best way to find me is through Sean Stone, my fan page on Facebook, and the lip.tv/Buzzsaw is where our show comes out, but it's also on YouTube. I mean, it's a YouTube show. So Buzzsaw is very easy to find, and we do weekly episodes, usually airing on the weekend. And we've had, great guests like Freeman Fly and David Icke, as you mentioned, and Jeremy Scahill and Chris Hedges, and people from the esoteric community like Teal Swan. And I mean, we've had so many topics, so many guests that it's a library in itself. I think we've done like 150 shows, so it's really worth watching. And the nice thing about a lot of these shows is that they're kind of timeless. They're just interesting interviews, and they're not necessarily just they're not news items for a moment, but they really can be looked at, and you can learn from them, no matter which episode you're watching or what point.
Yeah, there's some great topics there, a really wide variety. Anyway, hey Sean, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. I'm slipping off to sleep here in Ukraine, but you've still got a whole day ahead of you, so have a good one.
All right, enjoy it.
Yeah,
have a good night.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
So let me know what you think of what Sean had to say. Leave a voicemail. You can leave a voicemail at truthsentinel9.blogspot.co.uk, or you can find the links in the Truth Sentinel YouTube channel. You can also find a chat room there where you can ask questions, leave comments about our debate, or about something Sean said, or about anything I've said as well. And any voicemail you leave will be put on the show, and then we'll directly comment on it. Quick thank you to Seth Davis for putting us in touch with Sean Stone. Anyway, this is the section where we have debates or chat about other topics of interests. Like I said, we've got new short Sentinel debates and Sentinel chats as offshoots of this show, and you can find them on the Truth Sentinel YouTube channel. Sometimes part of the debate will be put on the Sentinel debate separate video, with the full debate being on the main show, and that's the case today. So you may have heard the first 15 minutes, but the full debate is here, and the topic is, does evil exist in the form of a devil and his demons, or is it just a concept? It's a fairly light-hearted look at the topic, as light-hearted as you can be when you're talking about the immense evil of the world and the devil and his demons. We do a little bit of research for these debates, but we have got limited time, not as much as we'd like, so we're just trying to provoke discussion, and we'd love to hear what you think. Leave a voicemail, and we can comment on it on the next show. So let's go over to Anthony, our academic researcher, formerly from the University of Bilkent, now conducting further research at the AGU State University in Kayseri, east of Cappadocia, in the shadow of the Erciyes volcano. Okay, so today's Sentinel debate is, does evil exist, and is it in the form of the conventional religious idea of a devil with his demons or not?
we're going to be just brainstorming basically, and perhaps opening a debate rather than finishing it or concluding it, and people can leave their own thoughts in the chat room or use our voicemail service, which I'm trying to promote at the moment. I'll give you further details about that at the end, but basically you can find it on the Truth Sentinel channel, YouTube channel. So for some people, these demons and the devil might be referred to under different names, like the jinn, for example. And some people even think they could have a connection to what people call aliens as well, but that's another topic. So just a reminder, the main title is Does Evil Exist? And is it in the form of a devil with his demons or not? I mean, some names for the devil would be Diablos or Lucifer. Oh, that's open to question. Beelzebub, Satan, often depicted with horns. Anthony, does the devil exist?
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Oh, yeah, good, thanks. Not bad. I understand that you're feeling a bit under the weather, though.
Yeah, I am a little bit. It's a occupational hazard of teaching. One student gets sick, they pass it around to other students, and eventually the teachers get sick. So
much like the Ebola virus.
Much like the Ebola virus, but yeah, hopefully a little bit more benign. Good. So about the devil, yeah. No, look, my own view is that the devil and demons are metaphors for our own wrongdoings, I guess you could say. You know, for the urges that people sometimes have to do things which we know are going to hurt others. I think that on a psychological level, you could say, if you start talking about the existence of the devil, you're attempting to externalize those dark urges, you know. So in the Middle Ages, you know, there was a lot of this, you know. There wasn't just a person who committed a criminal act, but there was, you know, a person who's been possessed by the devil. And if you can convince yourself that the devil has possessed either you or another person, then you or that other person can act without full responsibility, you know, because you're a puppet, you're being controlled.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's obviously a good argument, but some people would say, well, someone who's possessed by the devil isn't necessarily being controlled, because the concept of evil and the devil and evil spirits is often tied in not by someone who's being totally controlled, but someone who made the choice to get involved in something satanic or get involved with evil. They made the conscious decision to do that, and the result is this perhaps possession.
Yeah, I think there certainly are cases like that. There are areas of occult ritual practice which deliberately court what you might call demonic forces, but even those people are not using the word as literally as you might think. They're certainly not expecting a guy with horns to come up and you know, inspire them to molest children. It's just not, that's not what those people are generally about. Obviously there are exceptions, but
well, when we say the devil, of course, and possession, we don't necessarily mean that the devil it's that single entity that could be possessing everyone. We'd be talking about the devil and his demons, his little helpers, much like Santa has his helpers, his little elves, you know.
Satan's little helpers, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, these demons are an even grayer area, I think. I mean, if you, for example, take the Shinto faith in Japan. Yeah, so followers of Shinto believe in what they call the kami. Yeah, and on occasion that word has been translated into English as demon or devil, but of course kami are things like nature spirits, ancestral spirits, and so on. So these concepts get very fuzzy, and they don't equate across cultures or within cultures either. But look, in terms of the big guy with horns, I think I think he's been a very useful construct, shall we say, throughout history. There's, as I said, the you know, the ability to escape responsibility. There's also the devil, I think, has also been used, just like God has been used, to explain things that we don't understand. So there was a time, for example, when reading glasses were considered to be a bit suspect because, you know, they smacked of magic, which of course is connected to the devil. But obviously eyeglasses aren't magic. You know, once we understand how they work, you you just need Carl Zeiss, the founder of modern optometry, to sell you a good machine to make you a pair of lenses. No devil required. And that's...
Damn, I actually did think it was magic.
And that's how history has gone in terms of our understanding of the natural world has increased, and our need for supernatural entities has decreased at the same time. It's called the God of the Gaps theory, but you also have a devil of the gaps. And to a certain extent, I think that will always be with us. But it's while that kind of thing it isn't evoked so often nowadays as a way of explaining everyday stuff that we see around us, I think one thing we don't understand very well is the human mind and the motivations that people have for doing things. So I think there's a devil of the gaps there. It's quite dangerous in my view because I think, and this is my big problem with the devil in general, it's very simplistic, it's very reductive, and it really discourages further thought. I mean, we've got some people in the world at the moment doing some truly horrible things to each other, and we really urgently need to try and understand that. If you think of, if you compare this to some of the other kind of simplistic, reductive explanations that have been around in the last 20 years, for example, the "why do they hate us? They hate our freedoms" line that George W. Bush famously pulled out and took around America for a while. Obviously, anyone who believes
before he started taking away everybody's freedoms.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and I mean anyone who believes that it's that simple, that Islamist extremists are seeing, women wearing bikinis and people able to vote and so on, and they think, right, that's our reason for trying to destroy America. Anyone who really believes that is totally missing the point. But it is useful for the powers that be to have a certain percentage of the population believe that, because it shuts down critical thinking.
Yeah, indeed. What about people who get involved with occult practices, like people who dabble with Ouija boards and or people who do worship Satan, and some of them would actually testify they've seen things which are supernatural occurring, which just defies normal explanation.
I think they would, and many people who dabble in, or do more than just dabble in, ritual practices would say that they've experienced deep trance, that they've accessed other planes of existence. There, in many cases, I would say they would tell you that entities have been involved. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think that the fact they're saying those things necessarily means that we should, because again.
Sorry, could you repeat that last bit? Cause,
sure, yeah. I don't think that just because these people say that they contact spirit entities, I don't think that means we should necessarily accept that at face value.
But I think some people would say they've not only contacted them, but physical things have happened, like things flying across the room. Those kind of things which can't be explained by normal rational thought.
I agree, but I think we're entering a slightly different area there of spiritualism, which is, really more about the souls of dead people than about the devil, so called.
Well, no, some people would say these are, they're talking to demonic powers as well. Some people might say these are people from the afterlife, but then in some ways that is connected in a way, because if you believe that there is a spirit world, it's not such a leap to believe there could be an evil spirit world.
Well, maybe not, but again, I mean, this area, this kind of satanic ritual area. I mean, there are satanic ritualists in the world. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and there are also several kinds of satanic ritualists, and some of them are attracted to that path for reasons that you could say are quite philosophical, and some of them are not. They really do want to get in touch with the guy with the big horns and, like, get some evil powers off him, usually so they can, use those evil powers on their schoolmates. But what was I saying? Oh, yes. The satanic the satanic ritual phenomenon links back to something that I was saying before about shifting responsibility away from yourself or away from somebody who you love. Now, there was a spate of reports of satanic ritual abuse in the USA in the 1980s. It was just before a huge spate of reports of alien abductions, interestingly. But there was it was a phenomenon. This satanic ritual abuse phenomenon is how people described it. And then there was some serious research. I mean, at first, of course, social workers were just freaking out. They're getting they're ever more commonly hearing about, like little girls saying that, the devil kind of, possessed them or whatever. And but when some serious research was done, it was found that media exposure was often the cause, and in actual fact, what was really happening in these cases was these were very tragic cases. I mean, of real sexual abuse and real rape, but the satanic ritual part of it was in, okay, not 100% of cases, but a very, very high number of cases. The satanic ritual part of it was imagined by the victim, and the reason why a victim might imagine that there's satanic ritual going on in their family is because they simply cannot face the horrible truth that their mother or their father is sexually abusing them. And so again, bringing in this other level of my mum or my dad is possessed by the devil, it's the work of Satan, and so on. In a sense, it makes the experience no less traumatic, but it takes at least some of the blame away from the abuser. And so it's a very disturbing phenomenon, but it does not point in the direction of widespread, actual Satanists.
That may be true, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who could say that there's plenty of cases of people who have done some of these ritual child abuse scenarios because they were Satanists. So you can look at that both ways, really.
There are absolutely those cases, and I can't remember the name of the singer.
Ian Watkins.
Thank you very much. I think that was one of his many excursions into depravity. But those are, so the research, at least in the 80s, found, in the 80s and 90s, found that yes, those cases did exist, but they were a tiny percentage. And so what we're really dealing with is very disturbing behavior undertaken by individuals and other individuals not wanting to blame them for their horrible behavior. So yeah, but again, it's not an absolute. We can't say that every case is like that, but it's very often the case.
What about things like, have you ever seen the movie The Exorcist?
I have.
Do you know that was based on real events?
It was a long time ago that I saw the movie, but I think I might have known that, yes.
I mean, I think the boy involved was called Roland Doe. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's the case. And there's been some recent revelations from Tom Leonard, a guy who was actually there, involved with the exorcism of that boy, and he's told exactly what happened. And I mean, I can't detail it all now, but it's pretty shocking, and it involves some physical manifestations of things happening. So rather than just say somebody frothing from the mouth and violently contorting, some really weird, unexplainable phenomenon occurred in that particular case. And that's not the only case. There's been exorcists, and I think these people are probably good people to ask about whether the devil exists or whether the demon exists, because it's part of their daily work, Yes, if I was going to go and ask someone about something to do with English, I'd go and ask an English teacher. But if I wanted to ask about evidence of the existence of demons or devils, I might go to an exorcist. But they've seen cases of children running up walls. We can only take their word for it or ignore them, but that's what they say. They've seen really impossible situations occur in case of exorcisms.
Yeah, and those reports are really quite fascinating and disturbing at the same time, I think. I don't know that we're going to get to the bottom of those in the course of this discussion, but yeah, when physical phenomena start to occur, I think that then becomes a very different issue. Yeah.
But I think in relation to your point about blaming devils or demons for something that these people should take responsibility for, I think you're right, but that still doesn't say that doesn't really say whether the devil or demons exist or not. It just says that
I agree.
people should take responsibility of whether they choose evil.
Well, let's look at the Christian devil. Yeah, I mean, as we said before, there are many varieties. But if we look at Satan, we're on fairly solid ground.
Yeah.
And I think, so to speak, I think that we can, if we look at the sources, we can see pretty quickly that this particular devil is quite a hazy kind of made up concept. He's full of contradiction. I mean, he's been convenient, to Christianity for any number of things, but he just makes no sense at all as a construct. So, as we know, that Satan was created by God. He actually started off as an angel, so he was one of the good guys. But then he fell from heaven, as the expression goes, and became evil. And one reason that Christians will give you for why there is a character like this in their religion is to illustrate the principle of free will. So it's this idea, God didn't want his creations, his people and angels and so on, to be obedient robots who would just automatically do whatever he says, because that would just be meaningless, So he created thinking beings with individual consciences, and these creatures had the ability to use their consciences to make choices. So then it was up to each person, including us, to either stay on the good road or deviate from it and become bad. And so Satan is the ultimate metaphor for that. Started good, ended bad. But there's a bit of a problem with this, and a lot of people have pointed it out over the years, namely that Satan is not just a guy who, bitched a little bit behind God's back. He certainly did that in the Old Testament, but in New Testament times he's done an awful lot more than that. And given the specific character of the Christian God, this God should not allow Satan to exist in the world and to be doing all of these horrible things to precious living creatures. The reason why the reason why God shouldn't allow Satan to exist is because he's got three central character traits, and they are: he's all powerful, he's all loving, and he's all knowing. Now, if he's all of those things, then he knows every bit of suffering which Satan inflicts or causes people to inflict. He also knows that Satan's ways can be quite seductive, and so Satan's a powerful being who can trick basically good people into doing evil. So following that through, if God's all loving, that means he loves every person infinitely, and he would never allow them to be tricked into becoming one of the bad guys, because the punishment for that is eternal damnation. And since he's all powerful, he could stop Satan anytime. So it makes no sense that there is a Satan in the universe of this particular God. There's one way around this, or at least I can see one way around it, and that would be to say that sometimes we have to suffer for our own good, to learn a lesson or whatever. I think there's definitely some validity to that, but only to an extent. Going through hard times and emerging stronger and wiser, well, that's one thing. But with Satan, you've got this guy who's compelling people to do things which put them in direct conflict with God's will, and that's always going to end with those people being damned to eternal suffering. So why does an all-powerful, all-knowing and all-loving God do that? It makes absolutely zero sense.
But didn't you sort of answer your own question at the beginning by saying that God didn't want people to have to be robots? So there should be a choice between good and evil, and that Satan isn't necessarily all-powerful. Actually, he's just sort of a whisper in people's ear, who can tempt them, but has actually no power whatsoever. So really, all the power is with the people. They can choose whether to do right or wrong. And why should God remove that option, as then people would just literally be robots, because they would have no options other than good. So if we look at it in a simplified form as it being a choice between good and bad, if there's only a choice of good, then surely, we would just be robots.
Sure, but I mean, if you take I guess the original references to Satan in the Old Testament, he was really not that scary, and at that stage, I think probably your argument does hold up. But then when you get into the New Testament, he just got a complete makeover, and he became this all-purpose adversary. You know, he was the father of lies, he was a murderer, and then in Revelations, he was the guy, you know, he was going to be the executive producer and star of the end of the world, you know. So, I mean, a lot of it, to be honest, a lot of the New Testament writers seem like they were just making it up as they went along, to be honest, because they only had a few scattered references from the Old Testament to go on, and suddenly this Satan was, you know, everywhere and in everything. But once he became that powerful, then again, he made no sense in the context of that theology. It would be like, I don't know why I'm referencing George Bush so much this evening, but it would be.
I don't know. He is the great Satan, isn't he?
Yeah. Who knows where that idea came from? But it would be like if George W. Bush had claimed that he was sending enemy combatants to Guantanamo because he loved them and he wanted the best for them, and then he added that they'd never be released. So, which, you know, obviously, even for W logic, that would be pretty flawed, right? So,
that is a bit flawed, because it doesn't seem to tie in. Because, as I said, you know, people who might believe in God and the devil would say no. It's like I said, he's not a powerful being, really. He's just someone who people can take the choice to follow. Follow good or evil, you know.
There are, incidentally, those who do take that choice, and we're talking about Satanists again. And so let's talk about well, let's not talk about the teen Satanists. You know, let's talk about for want of a better word, serious Satanists like the Church of Satan, whose satanic Bible apparently outsold the Christian Bible on some university campuses in California in the 1960s, which I think is quite an achievement.
But is that a good achievement?
I don't know. But it is an achievement of some sort.
In some ways, isn't that, since people recognise that Satan or the devil is considered bad,
yep,
and then you have the option of good and bad, yep, what it says is that people on that campus are choosing bad over good.
Well, the Church of Satan's ideology was basically this: everything that you've been told in the Bible is wrong, and all of the manifestations in the Bible of what we later decided was Satan are actually positive manifestations. So the snake in the Garden of Eden, for example, was tempting Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and God said, don't eat from that tree. Remain ignorant and just listen to me and I'll tell you what to do. And the snake said, no. Don't subdue yourself to a higher power. You eat from that tree, get the knowledge of good and evil, so you can make up your own mind. And if your decision turns out to be better than what God tells you to do, go your own way. Now, the followers of Satanism would say, in that and many, many other examples, the Bible is actually telling people to do the opposite of what they should do. It's telling them to be obedient when they should rebel. It's telling them to be selfless at times when they really need to look out for themselves, and so on and so on. I think one criticism that you could definitely throw at the Church of Satan is that it suggests that selfishness is a virtue, but it certainly doesn't suggest that you should go out and do, you know, like rituals to bring dark powers to the world and kill people. It's more of a kind of a reactionary philosophy, if you like.
I mean, you mentioned there about sort of reversing everything in the Bible.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Satan would want, to reverse it all? So, and I'm going to say this before you do, because I know you're going to say it at some point.
Okay.
Someone had to say this. The greatest trick the devil pulled off was convincing people he doesn't exist.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I had
yes.
to get there before you, Anthony. Charles Baudelaire, or should I say in French, La plus belle des ruses du diable est de vous persuader qu'il n'existe pas.
Wow, Kant couldn't have said it better himself.
I think he probably could, but never mind.
Yeah, so this is the argument of the Church of Satan, that a lot of the kind of moral frames that we've been given are wrong, and in fact, very often, if you consider the opposite point of view to what is considered good in kind of Christianized modern Western society, if you consider the opposite, you find out that it's actually a more moral choice. That's their argument. They have this. They and several other organizations have always had this talent for like high drama, and that's why they very often you get the feeling that they're actually quite serious guys, but they just can't resist dressing up in silly costumes and shocking people. You know, it's kind of like if Marilyn Manson was I don't know, singing the works of Thoreau, you know. So, yeah, but it's not. I agree. It is a reactionary philosophy, and perhaps if you believe in God and you see these guys walking around in their capes and proclaiming the word of Satan, you'd think, oh my God, the end times are definitely coming.
But like, it does seem to be becoming, the occult is becoming increasingly popular and promoted in the entertainment industry, for example.
Is it?
Yeah, I would say so. At least the symbolism of it. You know, like, you know, things like Harry Potter movies, you know, and there's lots of teen sort of programs that you could connect to the occult in some way. It's becoming sort of fashionable in a way. And if I was the devil, that's something I'd do. I'd take control of the media and sort of make it more, you know, and get people to engage in Halloween and stuff like that, and the sort of soft occult practices which would actually lead them on to bigger things, in the same way that soft drugs might lead someone into darker things.
Yeah, maybe. If you were Satan, you would control the media. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, no. Let's imagine, for example, the devil does exist.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would do things like that. I would sort of get people to think that everything in the Bible was the opposite, and it was a tool to control people's minds. And then I would take control of the media, get people to follow me without even realizing it. I mean, there's an enormous amount of occult practices on TV, and you know, even things like just symbols, like, you know, doing satanic symbols that Aleister Crowley advocated, a sort of common practice these days amongst, you know, in the era of music and TV. Just the hand symbols, you know, there's some people who devote entire shows just to talking about these kind of things.
You know, I think in some ways that has been happening for quite a long time, and in some ways they have lost their shock value, and in some ways I think that is appropriate, because these things are very often, more than anything, quite silly. You know, you see a kind of inverted pentagram with a picture of Baphomet in the middle of it. You shouldn't be scared. It's probably, you know, a university student just spray painting on his guitar case because he didn't have the imagination to spray paint anything else.
Okay, but would you that may be the case, but
yeah, not always, but yeah.
But would you let your child play with a figurine of the devil?
That's a very good question. It's a very good question.
I know, it took me quite a long time to think of that one.
Yeah, well written. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think, because, you know, I have a young child, I find it very disturbing when he plays with guns. You know, he's a boy, and boys are going to play with guns. That's just life, you know. But I was in a toy shop the other day, and he went straight for the guns. They were like those water pistols that look like, you know, Kalashnikovs or something that have become popular recently, and he just went straight for them. And I thought, God, that's really disturbing. I certainly haven't encouraged him along those lines at all. You know?
Well, some people would say this is deliberate manipulation by the powers that be to get children used to something at an early age, so it becomes something that's not serious. In the same way, I was just talking about how they're using things on TV and getting children involved with stuff and making it sort of non-threatening. So they're doing that with guns. So what I'm saying is, it is a kind of a question to ask, whether you'd let your child play with a figurine of the devil, because if it's completely innocent and not a problem, why not? Because what I think it is that a lot of these things, like evil spirits and the devil, you can't really prove them, but they're linked to gut feelings and faith and emotions, and maybe there's a part of your conscience that would tell you there's just something wrong with letting your child play with a figurine of the devil. It's something within you that you can't quite put your finger on that would tell you that that's just doesn't feel right.
It could also be our training, because, I mean, you know, I think if we look at all the New Testament references to the devil, it becomes clearer and clearer, I think, that these group of writers found the idea of, they found their big villain, and that was really powerful for them, and they just went, you know, increasingly kept going back to the big villain. And I think that's the main thing with Satan. He did become an important part of the Christian narrative, as it became, more and more of this kind of big contest between Mr. Good with his fluffy beard and Mr. Evil with his silly horns. But what's really interesting, I think, is if we speculate about how deeply that kind of narrative has become embedded into the Western psyche, like whether there is, like a good figure and an evil figure, and that this evil figure has real power. If you look at the U.S. government and its various, wars, every time they're trying to convince their people to go to war, you're almost certainly going to see some kind of evil mastermind guy in the mix. It could be Saddam Hussein or Ayatollah Khomeini or Osama or Bin Laden or whatever. There's not always, but very often there's one. And I think that this may be a sign that this thinking of, there is a big bad guy in the world, it has gone really deep into our psyches. So then you see a little kid playing with a devil doll, and perhaps something instinctive that's been socialized into you goes off like a little alarm, rather than any rational thinking.
No, it could be, or it might not be. You talked about manipulation, that the devil and demons and God as well, and the Bible could be used as manipulation, and some people even say that's where religions all come from. But just because something is used as manipulation doesn't mean it has any relevance to whether it's correct or not, or whether it's good or evil. Because, for example, adults use sweets to try to get children to do things, or people use dog biscuits to get their dog to do something. That has no relevance as to whether the dog biscuit or the sweets are good or evil. It's just a tool that's used. So it's almost, what I'm saying is, it's almost completely irrelevant that people say religion or the devil is used as a tool to manipulate people. That of course is true. It's 100% true, but that has no bearing on whether the devil exists or not.
I would have to agree with you on that point, and you reminded me of something which I heard once. I visited in Sydney a coven some years ago, and the leader of the coven kind of gave an introductory, like a talk about what is involved if you want to become a member of this coven.
Was this Truth Sentinel research again?
Yeah, it was. I nipped back in time 20 years and did some research for you. Now I'm back.
Thank you.
I didn't join because I'm not a joiner in the sense of like spiritual organisations of any kind. They're just not for me. But I went out of curiosity and I found it quite interesting. But one thing that the guy said really stuck with me. He said that magic is like electricity. You can use it to light your houses or to execute people. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting. So he says magic is not black and white. It's a force that exists like electricity. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here, right? In a way, about God and the devil and so on. We can say they've been used for this purpose, that purpose, but that doesn't say anything about their essential nature.
Well, I'm sort of saying, it doesn't really say, although it's a good point to bring up, it doesn't really say whether something exists or not. It's just the way it's used, a bit like the internet. Yeah, it's like can be used for good or bad.
Yeah, I think that's true. But look, and I also think that there are evil people in the world. I think it would be very difficult to refute that. But if I'm going to give you an example of a particular individual. And it's not George Bush, but it's a close it's a close reference to the George Bush reference. I think one of the biggest demons that we've seen in the world, on the world stage, in the last couple of decades, is Tony Blair. That's my personal opinion. I mean, I find it quite difficult to see how the Western world can think of itself as having any kind of moral authority left at all, to go into these places and start, trying to set the world to rights, when this guy is not on trial in The Hague. It's just, to me, he is such a frightening figure, and the greatest irony now, of course, is that he's the peace envoy to the Middle East, which that just tells you all you need to know about the West, I think.
Well, and Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize as well. I mean, It's all crazy, isn't it?
It is. But look, a couple of weeks ago, a close friend of mine posted something on his Facebook page that referred to Tony Blair as a gay icon. right? And my response was to say, how can this guy be an icon for anyone, you know? But my friend told me something that I didn't know about Blair, because of course I'm not English, so I know about him mostly through his foreign policy. My friend told me that Blair fought quite hard for gay rights in the UK, and that there are millions of people who are quite thankful for the victories that he won on that specific issue. Now, to me, that is a very interesting example, because, okay, I would say, all right, well, point one that you've just made there, my friend, whose name I'm not going to give, point one, friend, you've made the point there that even the guy that I look at and think, oh my God, what a demon, maybe is not all bad, right? And dividing the world up into, you know, good guys and bad guys, with like the head bad guy at the top of Mount Doom is maybe not the best way to see things. but point two is Blair is a great example, because there are people in the world who would say that, you know, his actions in Iraq were totally justified. It was a war that, you know, we had to fight and blah blah blah. So they'd put Iraq in the Blair is good column, right? Whereas they might say that advancing the rights of gay people is immoral. There are people who believe that, yeah. So then they would put his work on gay rights into the Blair is evil column. So, you know, that and this is where I think Satan is such a confused and kind of ad hoc kind of creation. You know, if you're Satan, which of those things are you going to throw your weight behind? Are you going to be pushing for a war in Iraq, or are you going to want same-sex marriage? You see what I mean? I mean, even if there is a devil, what we could constitute as the devil's work differs completely depending on our own personal ethics. And I think that suggests strongly to me that the devil is just a projection of our personal ethics.
Well, I mean, definitely I'd agree that good or bad is open to interpretation. What some people's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, for example. So a lot of things are open to interpretation.
Yeah.
But what about things like, I guess, you know, coming back to whether the devil and demons do exist, and, you know, physical manifestations of them. I mean, you talked about your visit to this coven. When I was younger, I visited a Baptist church with my parents, and
almost as spooky.
and I saw there was someone, there was an exorcism which occurred right next to me, in the person in the seat next to me. So it was quite a disturbing experience when I was younger. And this person started violently contorting on the floor. They were literally sitting next to me the moment before, singing songs and stuff. So I was kind of shocked about this, and it was a very violent, unexplained, fit-like sort of occurrence, which anyone who's witnessed anything like this will tell you it's not likely they're acting. There was no reason to. It was a fairly small church, so there was no video cameras there or anything. There was no reason for this person to be acting. So there was some kind of phenomenon going on, and it wasn't. It didn't seem to be a medical fit. This person was screaming voices and referring to devils and demons, and they obviously the preacher started praying over this person. How do you explain those kind of occurrences?
I really don't know. I've never been present at an exorcism. I've never seen speaking in tongues in person. I've of course seen it in television documentaries, but I'm really not sure. I mean, the skeptic's first port of call in any situation like this is to say that it's about suggestibility, about suggestion, and that the person who is administering the exorcism or leading the service in which people are speaking in tongues has somehow created a kind of group mind where these things are almost expected to happen, and because they're expected to happen, then they happen. There's some kind of hypnosis or some kind of process like this that's going on, and it's suggesting to a person so strongly that something is happening to them that they really genuinely believe it.
No, that's a valid way to explain it, but it would turn this person to suddenly the world's best actor as well, because you know, acting is a skill that takes time to develop, and this person immediately becomes one of the world's greatest actors because they're pretending to be possessed in a way that is just
really, really disturbing and very convincing.
I'm not sure if I can completely go with you on that point, because I think, the difference would be, who's the best actor in the world in your opinion?
Oh dear. I would have used to have said what's his name, Johnny Depp, but he's really seems to have gone off the rails in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, and so I'm not sure anymore. I mean, that brings up a whole other topic.
Let's
about
not,
movies and why they've declined over the last 10 years. I guess Al Pacino.
All right, let's imagine Al Pacino is in a role where he has to go through an exorcism. So he's
he did play the devil, I believe, in Devil's Advocate.
He did, yeah. So his script is telling him this experience is going to happen to you. He knows that it's something that he will need to simulate. The person who is actually in that church doesn't believe they are simulating an experience. They believe they are having an experience. And in that context, I don't think acting is required. I think just reacting to what seems to be happening around you in the way that you naturally would, if it really was happening, is going to be sufficient. No acting ability necessary.
Okay, fair point. Serial killers, they often and murderers. Some sort of murderers who've killed people in quite brutal cases, which weren't because of revenge or anything like that.
Yeah.
Often talk about voices in their head. An extremely large number of people talk about these voices in their head, and I've always wondered why people don't seriously investigate this phenomenon. Because they're obviously not talking about their own thoughts. Otherwise, they would have said, "My own thoughts. I thought I should do this." But they actually refer to voices which seem to be implanted in their head. Who do you think these voices are? I mean, some people would say these are the demons or the devil speaking to them.
Yeah, I think so. But look, if I was to comment on this in any detail, I would be talking about stuff that I know very little about. But I think there are a couple of theories about this, and the one that I would lean towards is that these voices would be dissociative personalities. And so again, if you have this urge that you're going to go down to the shopping mall today and just open fire with a semi-automatic weapon, for many people to go through with that, well, God, hopefully not many people, but for a certain percentage of the people who might come to that point in their lives, they may still require an external person telling them what you must do. In much the same way as a sportsman will, we talked about this a few weeks ago, a sportsman will employ positive self-talk. These people are employing very negative self-talk. This is the theory. But they are so, what they're about to do is so extreme that they cannot perhaps even accept it coming from themselves. So it comes from this disembodied voice, which is actually just a part of themselves that they've dissociated and are now associating with someone telling them to do this.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, some people say that the devil and demons don't exist because, and that people's creation of the idea of this is actually an evil thing in itself, and some really evil things have occurred in the past with people sort of burning witches, and it still goes on in Africa. People who say someone's possessed, and so there can be children as well, and they end up being killed.
And ISIL exterminating the Yazidi people as well.
Yeah.
Is another instance of that.
Well, yeah. I also heard that they're supposed to be connected to Satanism in a way as well. I don't know if that's true. They're supposed to have... No, I was reading an article where some people believe that, though... what was the name again? The
Yazidi people. No, Yazidi people. Okay, again, I don't know a lot about these people, but their deity is considered to be a demonic deity in another religion. Perhaps it's Judaism. I would really have to check that. So there you have ISIL coming and going. Not only are you not good Muslims, you're not even Muslims at all, and you're devil worshippers. Kill.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that in these cases where people are killing people because they say they're evil, that's just evil in itself. So it is a very confusing topic. But
Yes.
I came across something that linked ISIS to this as well. Because you know the name Satan comes from, it seems to be linked to Set.
Ah, yeah, yep.
Well, I came across this Set guy. Do you know much about this Set?
I know that he was one of the kind of half a dozen upper pantheon of in Egyptian mythology, and that he was he, I believe, went on a journey through the underworld. Would that be correct?
I think that would be correct. And
Uh-huh.
Osiris, according to the story, was chopped into 13 pieces by Set,
Yep.
and the goddess Isis collected all of those pieces.
Yep.
And which Douglas Dietrich talked about. There seems to be, and it might be surprising to some people, a link between Satanism and the military. And he talked about
Uh-huh.
Michael Aquino, who was a
Yep.
well-known Satanist, who was a lieutenant in the US Army. And
Yep.
that he believed that there was ritual deaths and sacrifices going on, done in the name of the military as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Which is, if any of that is true, it is extremely disturbing. As far as you were mentioning before about Set, I think it is worth pointing out that when these characters come up in the context of Christianity, characters or events, there are very often precedents, and in the case of Satan, it has been argued that Set is the character on whom Satan is based, and there is actually an occult sect called Setians who follow.
That's
Set.
right, yeah. And there's OTO as well, the
Yeah.
satanic group that use Set as...
Yeah, the Crowley group. Yeah, and there's also another model, a system model, which is the devil of the Zoroastrian faith. And in fact, if you compare the scriptures of the Zoroastrian faith to the Bible, you are really, really struck by the parallels. It's quite amazing how similar they are.
Well, there's a devil-like figure in Buddhism as well,
Yeah.
Mara, who's a tempter, and apparently tempted Buddha by trying to seduce him with the vision of a beautiful woman,
Yeah.
which I can totally relate to.
And a lot of people use this as in a very damning way. Like as in, therefore religion is nonsense. In a sense, I would agree, but I would also say this: the other way to look at it is these tales have universal value. So if you've got different traditions in different parts of the world at different times, all having stories about people, a guy sitting on a mountain or in a cave or whatever, and being tempted by dark forces, then there's something in that story that speaks to a lot of people.
This again, I would say, if I was the devil,
Yeah.
I would create similar stories to say, if the Bible was true, I would create similar stories around the world to confuse people.
Okay, fair enough. But I wanted to say, I think very often when these stories have power, you do see them resurfacing in different contexts, and that explains a lot of the similarities between religions. It is technically, it does mean that one religion has kind of ripped off the story from another one, but I don't think that we should necessarily damn them for that.
That's only your opinion, of course. So.
Of course, yeah, and I think sometimes it's more of a process of slow evolution, where one story becomes another one, and without anybody thinking, let's nick that. It just these stories kind of are they almost have a life of their own, but I don't think they're a literal life in the sense of like that, because the devil turns up tempting like the Buddha and Jesus and various other people doesn't mean he exists.
I mean, the truth is we can't really prove the existence of a devil or demons any easier than we can prove the existence of God.
Yeah.
But some people may say they can see the evidence of both God and the devil around them, and some people will explain it in another way. But what about evil? Do you think we could agree that evil exists?
Yes, I think so. But that doesn't actually say much in itself. we would have to be more specific, which we don't have time to do. So when we say evil, are we talking about some external force that's out there that acts on people's crania and makes them do bad shit, or like we would have to define our terms?
Well,
which
no,
I think
exactly, we would, yeah, and we don't really have time for that today. So.
Yeah. But I was hoping to leave you with another example from the movies, if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the Name of the Rose. It's a book I loved, and it later became a movie with Sean Connery in it. And the plot centers around some mysterious deaths in I believe, an Italian monastery, and a monk called William of Baskerville gets called in to investigate these deaths because
I might have heard this. It's quite a terrifying horror movie, isn't it?
It is quite a scary movie, yeah. So this William of Baskerville gets called in to investigate because he's ex-Inquisition, right? So he knows about the wily ways of the evil one, yeah. So he's in this monastery snooping around, and he's trying to find out who might have committed these murders, and he's constantly being asked if he's detected the work of the devil, right? Eventually, this William, he kind of loses his temper, and he says, in the presence of several monks, he says, "The only evidence of the devil I see here is everyone's determination to see him at work." Now, The Name of the Rose is quite a philosophical novel, and it was very clever because it hid some very in-depth theological consideration behind this kind of goofy facade of like a medieval Poirot or medieval Sherlock Holmes kind of whodunit thing. And the author was really onto something here. I think that if you consider that situation, if murders are happening, and then a guy comes in and says, "Yes, I see the devil at work here," then that lets people off the hook. In that particular context, there's two possibilities: the devil is at work and everybody's off the hook, or somebody, at least one person in that monastery, someone that you live with, eat with, work with, suddenly does actively awful things, and you have to confront that. And confronting that in the person of somebody that you know, perhaps somebody you trust, is in a sense far more disturbing than positing the bogeyman. So I think that's basically my take on it.
Okay, and I would just finish by saying that. Much the way I said at the beginning, that I don't think anyone who uses the devil or demons to explain a situation, or who's involved in something bad, and people say they're possessed, I don't think they're off the hook. I think they still chose it to do what they did, but some people might say the devil gave them a bit of a hand, maybe.
Okay, fair enough.
So, the question was, does evil exist, and is it in the form of the conventional religious idea of a devil with his demons or not? Let us know your views, leave a voice message or use the chat box. You can sign in as a guest on the chat box. Leave a voice message, it will be put on the next show. Go to the About section on Truth Sentinel, or click on the orange icon at the top right, or go to truthsentinel9.blogspot.co.uk. Thanks again, Anthony, for joining us. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks for the chat, Scott. It's always fun.
Speak to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So let us know what you think. Is there a devil? Are there demons? Remember, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth, Albert Einstein. Remember also, there's a donations button on the Truth Sentinel YouTube channel. Feel free to support us. People who donate £25 or more, it's Christmas soon, so I've knocked off some more money. If you donate £25 or more, you get a Truth Sentinel t-shirt. Just contact us. You can contact us before you pay the money if you like. Just send us an email with your size, your address, and then make a donation, and I'll send you a t-shirt. You can see pictures of the t-shirt on the Twitter channel, or I can send you a picture if you like. It's got the Einstein quote I just gave you there, and the picture of the Truth Sentinel logo on the front. Shows people where you stand, and lets people know that you're questioning the government too, and the more people around that do that, the better. Also a good way of meeting people. It's a good talking point. When they see that quote on the back, you could meet like-minded people, maybe even fall in love. Donations of less than £25 but more than £5 get a mention at the end of the show as a joint sponsor. Everyone gets a mention who makes a donation, really. If you don't want to be mentioned, please let me know in an email. You can remain anonymous if you like. Donations pay for equipment, travel, time, calls to guests, PR, etc. As well as our own Truth Sentinel t-shirts, we've also teamed up with a t-shirt company to produce their own political t-shirts. So if you'd rather choose something different, that's fine. Ours are obviously raised more money for Truth Sentinel to keep the show on the road, but and we'll get them made them in Ukraine, so you're helping the economy. But the other company, TruthT-shirts.com, have a wider range. They offer you a 10% discount as a Truth Sentinel listener. And each t-shirt donates £2.50 to Truth Sentinel. And when you buy a t-shirt from them, you must use the Truth1 code to get your 10% discount and for us to get the donation. That's Truth1. They can also do customized t-shirts if you're going to a protest march or something. Again, a great way to meet people and to let people know what you think about our current world and our government system. So let's wind down. Don't forget to come and say hi, get in contact via Facebook, Twitter, email scottsentinel9@gmail.com, and please leave a voicemail. Topics coming up in future episodes could include Fukushima, Chernobyl, where we might actually like to go there and do a show from Chernobyl, missing persons, time travel, Dyatlov Pass incident, religious cults such as Scientology, anarchy, parallel universes, the control of scientific fact and education, Utopia, Noah's Ark and the Flood, Revolution, and of course we'll have our Truth Alliance discussions maybe every month or two. Let me know what you think of the show. Other shows we listen to: Alex Jones, Hagman and Hagman, Freeman Fly, Mark Cockin, John Gary, David Icke, Pete Wicker, Sheila Zielinski, UK Column, The Average Liberator, Lit TV and Buzzsaw, of course. Sometimes watch Trues. People have divided opinions about Russell Brand. The jury's still out for me at the moment. He's getting a lot of flack from alternative media lately. Let me know what you think. Do you think he's genuine or not? I sometimes still watch Trues. I find them, they're quite short but entertaining. I don't know, I'm still making up my mind. Any sponsors or advertisers, please get in contact. We're also always looking for interesting guests or researchers, so please get in touch. scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Hope you have a great week. Catch you later. Goodbye.